Welcome to Finding the Guardian of Your Soul, the podcast for amazing women who believe in the power of personal growth and are ready to rewrite their love stories. I'm Lisa Shield, and I'll show you that finding extraordinary love is easier and closer than you think. Welcome to Getting Inside the Right Male Mind. This is for the woman who's done the work and still wonders, where is he? My husband, Benjamin, is about to share what's going on in the hearts and minds of the men you're trying to find. So in this episode, we're going to explore how spirituality shows up in a man's world. I ask Benjamin to share how men express their spiritual side and why it might not look like yoga mats, crystals, or meditation cushions, but can be just as deep. Great. So I'm Lisa Shield.
And I'm Benjamin Shield.
And we want to welcome you to Getting Inside the Right Male Mind. So when we went on our first date, Benjamin's energy felt so spiritual to me that I thought he must have a spiritual path. And being a woman, I thought he might follow some kind of teacher like Buddha, or that he meditated or went to yoga, that he did spiritual things, but he did none of those things. Still, I could tell that he was the most deeply spiritual man I'd ever met. And I have to say that for the 23 years we've been together, I'm still fascinated by all of this. So what I quickly came to see is that Benjamin is a living expression of all the spiritual principles. And babe, I don't mean to embarrass you when I talk about you in such glowing terms. It's just, you know how much I love you and that this is how I feel about you. So I hope none of this embarrasses you. So for me, Benjamin defines what it means to be kind, generous, grateful, dedicated, devoted, honest, generous, selfless, compassionate, present, unconditionally loving. I could go on and on, but I think that's enough. And what I notice about him is that he never reaches to be those things. He just is those things. He embodies these qualities. They're his defaults. You know, and at the same time, even though your first impression, as was mine, is that Benjamin is one of, for me, he was the kindest person, genuinely kind person I'd ever met. Once you get to know him, you also start to see how strong and clear his boundaries are. So there's this beautiful balance of this man who, because he has such strong, clear boundaries, can really also be so genuinely, naturally, deeply spiritual. So after 23 years, I continue to look to him as my North Star for, whenever I need to make a decision, all I have to think is, what would Benjamin do? And I have an easy answer, and I know it's the right answer. So I want to talk today about how spirituality shows up in a man like you, honey, because, there are no yoga mats and crystals and, Buddhist texts. There's just somebody who really lives a truly principled life. One of the things I was thinking about, because on our first date, I asked you if you had a spiritual path. And, you almost short-circuited before you said, I don't think I've done a spiritual thing in my life, which spoke to your humility. And something, which you're really good at, by the way, but something that I've come to really see is that, and I was thinking about this today as I was working on this broadcast, that highly masculine men don't necessarily follow other men.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't necessarily be looking for a spiritual guide, because to have a guide, that means you would have to follow that person. But that you may be looking for examples or mentors, in the sense of, this is a person I truly admire, yes. Right? So it might be that a lot of deeply principled, naturally spiritual men like you don't look for spiritual teachers or guides.
Well, I have in the past, and often it's disappointed. I think that people could sound profound, but the actual information they're giving is often things we already know. And it just sounds profound, and often we need to be remembered of it. But being spiritual to me is almost like a fish describing water, because they're in it. They can't really describe it.
Right.
And I've always been reluctant to co-opt another culture or another religion or belief system, because it's reaching for something outside of myself and trying to bring it into myself. I think true spirituality comes from inside and emanates out.
And it's a conclusion, what I'm hearing you say, it's something we come to within ourselves.
Yeah.
I mean, some people I think why people look to teachers is because they don't know where to go to look for it within themselves.
Exactly. And they feel that other people have the answer. And the truth is that I think we all have the answer. And I think
And we don't.
Yeah, and we don't. But I think that inherently we do. I think it's like a muscle that needs to be exercised and strengthened to really trust our own wisdom.
And can you define what spirituality means to you?
Well, there are some things that don't have vocabulary, but I think that, when I put together my second book, For the Love of God, with my friend Richard Carlson, who wrote Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. And I was desperately trying to enhance my personal relationship with God. And I came, the conclusion I came to is something extremely simple. I just pictured myself on an exercise bicycle in just a simple room with a bare light bulb over my head. And the faster I pedaled with kindness and compassion and tolerance and charity and love for other people and love for myself, the brighter the bulb was lit. If I slowed down, the bulb diminished. So at any given moment, I'm creating my own spirituality with my actions, my thoughts.
And do you feel that inside of you? Are you aware that that's where you're coming from when you live your life?
I think that it's not something that I'm aware of. Again, just like a fish isn't always aware of water.
It's just who you are.
Yeah, and it's kind of like brushing your teeth, that when you're not brushing your teeth. It feels really weird. So when I'm not kind, or I'm not compassionate, or I'm not tolerant, and we all have those moments of being judgmental, whatever it might be. It stands out. So rather than being the norm, it's the what's out of the norm.
And so you just, it doesn't feel good to you to do those things, and so you do what feels good in your heart.
Yeah. And you mentioned that seeking out mentors. And what I've come to learn in all my decades on the planet is that people are complex. So even the worst person on the planet I can learn from, and even the best person on the planet I have to kind of turn my direction for certain things. So for each person you meet, or each person I meet, I take what's good, what I can learn. And I'm often surprised at those who I could learn from.
That's profound. And sometimes it's what not to do.
Exactly.
It's how, it doesn't mean that you have to judge that person for being that way, and you can. But at the same time, you can look at somebody and just say, wow, I wouldn't want to do that, or that's not how I would want to be.
Yeah, and I think we've all experienced that growing up.
Really? Did you experience that?
We hopefully we're given a good moral set of values, and some things we say, wow, I think I'm just going to do a 180 on that one.
Yeah, I had a lot of that with my upbringing. You don't follow a specific spiritual path, but you live with such powerful values. And I'm curious where those values come from.
I think that I was fortunate in that, like the rest of us, we had imperfect parents. But what they did give me was a set of a foundation of morality and ethics, and fighting the good fight, standing up for others, not tolerating indifference or being judgmental against any sect or person or religion or race.
Wow. Yeah, your parents were really amazing that way.
Expansive. They were inclusive.
Yeah.
And I think that the one of the goals of spirituality is inclusivity, is to really bring people into the world rather than have them other. As soon as it becomes exclusionary, it becomes us and them.
Right.
And so there's a veil or even a wall between people. And so the more inclusionary we can make our lives, the more spiritual it is. And the more open we are to other people's experiences and learning through them.
There's a lot happening in the world right now based on spiritual, at least people try to couch it in doing what's spiritually right or spiritually wrong, but there's such a divisiveness, there isn't such an us and them right now, that how do you coexist with that?
I think there always has been an us and them, and I think there always will be an us and them. And I think inherently mankind is tribal. And the big discrepancy between us and them is often insecurity, that people have to develop a sense of other to make themselves more important or to make themselves right. And so the more we feel secure within ourselves, the less we have to make other people other, to such a degree that that we hate them or we fight them.
But it seems very challenging right now because in some ways these things have been so magnified and polarized that it's hard not to take a stand. I think that's what's going on, that, with social media, with the culture, the climate, it has become so polarized, and I think that people have intentionally done that.
Yeah.
I think the media has intentionally done that on both sides because it sells.
Yeah. Fear sells. Fear sells. And it's really navigating between taking a stand of this is who I am, this is where I stand, this is what I believe, this is what's worth fighting for, this is worth defining, who I am, and also just, really letting people in, even the worst person on the planet, if you go one level under their behavior, their terrible behavior, and one layer under that, and one layer under that, you get to a place where there's just someone who wants love. And if we can see that in even the worst personalities and the worst acts on the planet, that what is driving them, then it helps us to be with other people and other beliefs.
And coming to love, how did your spiritual way of being influence the way you approached dating before we met?
Well, I think it's a learning experience. I recently thought of my life as like one of those old-fashioned pinball games where you keep hitting a bumper and you go boing, but it propels the ball forward, and then it goes boing. Another mistake, another bad relationship, but you keep getting propelled forward. And so, I think that the act of dating, without that, we don't hit the bumpers and we don't go forward. We have to make mistakes. We have to have bad relationships because we learn from it, and we can't have good relationships until we learn from the others.
Mm-hmm. And I also think another way your spirituality influenced your dating was how you navigated, how you handled yourself, your honesty, your caring. I mean, you were so kind. You were so present. You really brought your full self to the experience. You know, you weren't phoning it in. You wrote to every single person. You let them know if you weren't going to continue. You thanked people for their messages. I mean, people do not do that.
Yeah, and it's a shame because we're not dealing with money. We're not dealing with material things. We're dealing with people's hearts. Mm-hmm. And it could be heartbreaking to be ghosted or not to get a response, particularly if someone has written a beautiful letter or message.
Right.
You know, we're dealing with people's hearts. And it's easy to forget that when we think of online dating as like eBay for people. You know, we just
Right.
go on to the next thing and it becomes addictive and our sensibilities diminish.
And it's a shame, you know, because something that could be so wonderful like internet dating, you know, the downside, I mean, of the many dark sides, but one of the downsides of this is that it just becomes like a factory, or, you know, you're just churning through people. Yeah. There's the contradiction of choice. What do you call that? The something of choice, the paradox of choice, yeah. You know, where there's too many choices and then people stop being people. You know, you stop forgetting that people have hearts.
Yeah, and I think our lives become more dull. Mm-hmm. And it's like with the news. I mean, we could hear about 1,600 people dying in an earthquake in Myanmar, but it doesn't really settle. It's like, oh, that's a shame. That's terrible. But if we take the lives of, if we learn about one person who died and their family and how it's going to affect generations, or how the rest of their family is going to live, or if the rest of the family did live, if we take one person, it actually magnifies rather than trying to take it all in, which minimizes it.
Right.
And so with dating, if we think of the other person at the keyboard who's writing to us, rather than, you know, there are all these messages in my inbox, I'm really popular, you know, but if we just think of each person as an individual.
And that's what people are missing right now.
Yeah.
They're not seeing the individual. And then, you know, what's so incredible, and that often happens, is people are managing their own upset, disappointment, pain, rejection, you know, and they're very caught up in that, what's happening with themselves, but often not with the person on the other side. That's one of the hardest things, I think, in dating, is to really be present, like you're saying, to the fact that, you know, it can be hard to reject somebody. For you, that may be a hard thing to do, and it's easier just to walk away, right? Because you're managing your own fears. But then at the same time, you have to remember that there's a whole other person on the other side.
Yeah.
And then, of course, that would be where selflessness comes.
Yeah. Getting back to something we talked about spirituality.
Yeah.
That spiritual experiences does not make a spiritual person. There was a Beatles song called Buffalo Bill, you know, who did you kill? It's actually from a true story that the Beatles were in India studying with transcendental meditation.
Maharaji, whatever.
Yeah, and there was a guy named Bill, and, you know, very wealthy, and he went out and killed 3 tigers and then went back in to meditate. And so that's what the song is about. Buffalo
No
Bill.
way! I didn't know. Who did you kill?
So John, what I was just saying, you know, so people are, you know, like going cross-legged and oming and things like that, and feel that they're spiritual.
Right.
Where their spirituality is episodic, and episodic spirituality doesn't reach the cellular level. Wow. So.
Oh man, I'm gonna have to go back and listen to this episode. This is my favorite one we've ever done. Oh my gosh. Yeah, there are so many questions that I've written down here that I want to ask you. So what made you, I like this one a lot, I'll go with it. What made you decide that I was your person? Was there something spiritual about the moment you knew?
I wouldn't define it as spiritual. Mm-hmm. I would define it as we were both open. Mm-hmm. And whether there was a second date or not, it was going to be an extraordinary experience, which is a spiritual experience. When two complete strangers who have never met, who could be, just have come from completely different backgrounds, could sit across from each other and spend an evening, spend 1 hour or 2 or 3 hours together and really learn from each other and really merge. That's spiritual. We talk about having a bell jar over the two people, that nothing else exists. That is a spiritual experience. So spirituality comes from the macro, but it also comes from the minutia.
And it wasn't something we were doing in that moment. It was just how we showed up and how we were being with each other.
Yeah.
There weren't, and allowing whatever magic would happen, to happen. I don't know how to say that, but that was the ability, I think, for both of us having let go of so much of our baggage and our past. You can talk about doing that, but showing up in that moment so completely.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Well, we showed up leaning in. And I think, unfortunately, people become jaded with dating or relationship, and they lean back.
Yeah.
So they never have that connection.
Yeah.
They never, it's either an interview, or it's, just waiting to prove someone wrong. And, this guy is just like the others.
Or walking in with strategies of how can I get him to like me?
Yeah.
What do I need to do to get this guy, to think I'm pretty or sexy or,
And
manipulations.
Each strategy, each layer of ego is a layer of a veil between two people. And so the more we can lift that veil, the more magic can happen. And it doesn't have to lead to happily ever after. It could be one date, but both people will be enriched from it. And, they walk to the car and say, wow, that was, it's not my guy, it's not my woman, but what a wonderful evening.
I was just talking about games and strategies. You are so not a person who plays games. I couldn't even imagine you in a relationship with somebody who was trying to manipulate you. Have you always been this way in relationships, or did that evolve over time?
Well, I think everything with us hopefully evolves rather than devolves with time. And I think people devolve if they focus on the negative.
But do you think you ever played games in relationships, or maybe you were even just pulled in by someone's games?
I think that I willingly was pulled in.
Really? So that's interesting.
In dating, not long-term relationships, but you just kind of know if you're with a player, and and it expresses that part of but two people know that this is where it is. It's at this level. So one person isn't longing for something deeper or more shallow. It's two people.
But do you think somebody eventually got hurt? Like, did anyone get attached?
Not that I could think of.
No?
No.
Huh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's hard to say. I can't really speak for other people. I think being on the planet so many years that I don't know if people got hurt. I don't know if it just seemed like something casual to me and something that people really got hooked in and were hurt.
I would guarantee you, because women get attached, and they often try to act unattached, because they think that that's how a man wants them to be, but they're attaching. That's just how unless a woman is just so guarded and in her masculine, her feminine nature is to attach.
So I learned from it.
Yeah.
And again, it's like that ping pong or pinball game that if I didn't learn from past experiences, past mistakes, past relationships, past dates, that I wouldn't be where I am today.
So a man of your principles, because you're a very principled man, I'm guessing, and it would be interesting, I think, for listeners to hear about how there were probably times in your life, even though you wanted female companionship, that you weren't looking for something serious or committed. Were there times like that?
Sure, if I came off a relationship where I was hurting, and maybe I just wanted, maybe I didn't know what I wanted, and I think that confusion can be a source of pain for the other person, even more for the person themselves. So I think there were times where I was just hurt or in pain, and still wanted and needed companionship and connection.
And were there times in your life where you were feeling just like you were enjoying your life and you were enjoying being single, and you didn't want a relationship? You wanted to enjoy your freedom?
Years before we met, I had a Bernese Mountain Dog, Jonah, and we were both born in September. We're both Virgos, so I would tell people, in the evenings we just play music and organize things and criticize people. And there's a time where it seems like it's just easier not to be in a relationship, and not to deal with all this, not to have all the things. But if one goes in, again, leaning in rather than leaning away, it's a very different experience.
Can I ask you, what was the longest period you spent single without a girlfriend or a wife?
It's hard to say because there already may have been like a date here and there.
Yeah, but I mean single, like you could have been dating but still not been in a committed relationship.
I'd say from 1976, coming off of a difficult marriage, a very brief marriage, to about the year 2000, where I dated Nancy just before I met you for.
So that was a long time.
It was, and there were some dates in there, but nothing serious.
Really?
There were interactions, and I wasn't without dating or without companionship on different levels,
but not really in a serious relationship that you thought would go somewhere.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I think I had a lot of learning to do. So, a lot of integration. And I also brought in other things, therapy and other things that made me who I am, as I'm sitting here today. So it wasn't just a period of abstinence or, from dating or relationship. It was bringing things in. It was, other experiences and other things that tested me and I learned from. And
Wow. What qualities were most important to you in a woman, and how were those tied to your own values or spirituality?
I think...
they were all in your profile.
I think that it's important that a woman, or the woman I'm with, is inclusive. So sometimes I talk about making the container large enough so that idiosyncrasies and things like that are contained within the container, or within the container, and so it doesn't seem like other. And so, and I try to do the same thing. So, idiosyncrasies don't fall out of the container, and it just seems irritating. It just seems like, oh, that's who she is. That's fine.
Good. And what else? What were other qualities that were so important?
Honesty, presence, a generosity of spirit.
Talk about that a little bit.
Well, it's meaning that we take the other person into account, and that generosity. When we talk about patience is really impatience to the point we can't stand it. So I was patient to a point. What it means is I was impatient the entire time. So with generosity, it's almost invisible because it's not working at it.
Right.
It's not like, okay, I'm going to be generous, or it becomes transactional. Well, I did these 3 things for you, and it's not like that at all. It shouldn't be, in my opinion. It just should be something that 2 people giving to each other, it's just something that brings each of us joy, both in the giving and the receiving.
Yeah. It's magical to be in a relationship like that.
Yeah.
where the generosity, where we've set the foundation for there to be that kind of generosity, because of all the other things that the trust, the safety, the compassion, like there's so many things that make it possible. It's like arteries, or a heart. I can get the metaphor of a heart because when there's love and all the arteries are flowing, do you know what I mean? The compassion, the kindness, that's sort of what the metaphor of the heart is.
Yeah.
The blood flowing, through those spiritual channels, and there's no blockages.
Yeah, and the heart doesn't just pump blood out, it takes blood in.
Mm-hmm.
So it gives, but equally important, it receives.
Mm-hmm.
And for some people, it's easier to give
Mm-hmm.
and much more difficult to receive.
Mm-hmm.
And that does the other person an injustice.
Yeah. I found in the early, part of our relationship that I had to take pause, to receive your generosity and to realize, I could see the love that you, and just the generosity you gave your how generous you were with your generosity.
You look puzzled when one of the first things I gave you was a AAA card. Protected on the road.
Right. But I could see the generosity there. I also saw that you saw me as a long-term partner, which was very sweet. But I had to pause and take that in and look at where I wasn't receiving this beautiful gift, and to stop and say to myself, he is doing this because he wants to. This is who he is, and it's part of your gift to him is to receive that, to take that in, because he wants you to. But I had to stop and do that because it was not something, like you said, that we're so used to. What should a woman look for if she wants to find a man with real spiritual depth? Because a guy like you doesn't talk about being a spiritual guy. Yeah. I mean, if a guy does talk about how spiritual he is, that's already a sign to start.
Right.
Because men don't talk, they just are.
Yeah. And that's what a woman should look for. A man who shows up, who's impeccable with his word, who shows kindness, not just to you, to the woman, but to other people, even the dry cleaning lady on the other side of the counter, or someone bagging the groceries, or whatever it is. That kindness, it doesn't have a hierarchy. That you should be kinder to this person than this person.
Oh, I love you. You just tear up when you said that, because that's so who you are. Oh my God, you're just, you don't see. It's crazy, like you don't see or judge people. You really see people as equal. It's just incredible. It's also very important, I think, that for women to understand, because we're so vocal, we're so verbal, we want to talk about the things we're passionate about. We want to share them. We want to, if we have an incredible experience, we want to talk about that. Men don't always do that. They don't, women want to see it, hear it verbally. They want to hear how spiritual the guy is and what he did that was so spiritual. A truly spiritual man will not talk about how spiritual he is. It's in his beingness. So I think a lot of women miss these really great guys. Like I've had situations with clients where, this guy's a coach, and he is talks to big groups. And there's one woman once handed me 2 profiles, and one was just a really great guy. You could hear it in his profile. He had principles, depth, whatever. And then the other guy was a coach who talked to big groups. Mm-hmm. And she said, which one would you go out with? And I said, well, the really nice guy who has heart. She was fascinated with the coach. Mm. That's the one she picked. And he was such a disappointment because it was all presentation. Yeah. It was all him acting the part of a coach instead of being this genuine, kind human being. So women have to watch out for that.
Yeah, and I think it starts with security within ourselves. That the more secure we are of who we are, what we are, how we are in the world.
We have nothing to prove.
Yeah, we have nothing to prove, but we're also not magnetized to people that look like they have it all together.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, the trick of humility, which I've learned with you, and I love, I sometimes poke you, to play with you, to see where you'll go. And when it comes to humility, and you always have a way of artfully dodging the egoic, the egoic path.
Well, I think one downfall with, and I don't know if it's ego or humility or what, but often people, like people will write a book and they are defined by being the author
Right.
of the book. But that book may have been written 15 years ago. And so it actually tethers a person back. If they say, yeah, I wrote this book and it's this and that,
Right.
and they identify, they're stuck in that time period. Wow. So if you just say that, yeah, that was perfect then, and that's who I was then, but 2 days later, I'm someone else, or not someone else, but even more because I did that, but I'm not going to define myself or lock myself into that,
And that's so living in the present moment.
Yeah.
So the humility isn't even about being humble. It's just because you're present to who you are now, not who you were.
Right, that was then and this is now.
Mm-hmm. Wow. It's amazing to think of living life that way. That's a lot of, I know you struggled with Eckhart Tolle because you didn't feel
That's another subject.
right, but it's interesting because you're just describing living in the now.
Yeah.
Wow. So how can a woman know if a man truly values partnership and isn't just dating to fill a void or pass the time? And you pick up on this so quickly with men.
Well, I think that men move forward. If they find someone, if they're looking for a relationship and deeply want relationship and are mature enough to move forward, that the second date builds on the first and the fifth builds on the fourth, and a man shows that he's more and more interested rather than plateauing and being comfortable with just the way things are. And there have been a lot of women in your program who have dated married men, or men who just aren't available, or avoidant men, those relationships don't have a chance of moving forward, or the slightest chance. So a woman is looking forward to a man who shows up, is true to his word, really in a humble way wants to leave the world a better place than when he entered, whether he's a car mechanic or a psychotherapist.
So what's one thing women might overlook in a man that's actually a powerful clue to his emotional or spiritual maturity?
That a woman
might overlook. What is something? What is one thing that a woman might overlook in a man?
Well, I think that some women may mistake kindness for weakness.
Right.
Or niceness is weakness. Because being nice, you're trying to impress someone. Mm-hmm. And that comes from insecurity. And we can call it weakness. But kindness is cellular. It's molecular. It's not an act. And it shows up in the little things and the big things. So.
If you could speak directly to the women listening who are still searching, what would you want them to know about men like you?
Well, I think it's going past the book's cover, the cover of the book. Because what's in the book could be completely enriching and life-changing. And I think it's easy to fall in love with the covers.
Yeah. Oof. Okay. So, honey, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
I love you with all my heart.
I'm here all week.
I know where to find you. One of the great gifts of being your partner is the love and the care that you put into everything you do for me. You know, you literally never phone it in. And I feel the depth of your love for me. I truly do in everything that you do. When I asked you to speak at our most recent live event and to share with the women how I embodied sensuality, you know, I thought, oh, he can get up and just sort of riff, go one, down the list of sensual traits that we were exploring and just kind of riff on them. And instead, you probably, spent, hours and hours writing, one of the most beautiful, beautiful tributes to the things that you love about, that you find sensual about me, which I treasure. And you could have, brought tears to everyone's eyes, including yours. And but you could have just got up and, and spoke from your heart. But you cared so much, and you do that with everything. So it's been a joy, to experience you and to experience this life with you. Yes, of course you can. Of course. Thank you for sharing your heart with everyone today, and most of all with me. I want to thank everybody who joined us. This has been Getting Inside the Right Male Mind. Please, please, please go to lisashield.com just lisashield.com, and you will land on my website. You can learn more about the work we do, find previous episodes of Getting Inside the Right Male Mind. You can learn about our coaching programs. We have a wonderful course, a 12-week course called Emotionally Naked Dating. I'm sorry, I'm so moved that I'm not present. And I also encourage you to look into that, because this is where you can actually work with Benjamin and me directly, get coaching from us, experience our relationship up close and personal. If that's something that interests you, hop on over there. And please tune in again. The name of this broadcast is called Finding the Guardian of Your Soul. This is one particular subset of broadcasts that we do. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for joining us. I'm Lisa Shield.
And I'm Benjamin Shield.
And thank you again for being here. Bye-bye.